Hello and welcome to Perspectives. I'm David Schoneman. I'm glad to have you joining us once again. I hope that you're following along at some of the shows we've been doing, talking about Trump's second administration here and the effect that it's really having on all of us, having on the world. Things are happening very, very quickly. Today is April 15th, 2025. We're at about day 85 into Trump's first 100. Everyone looks to the 100-day mark. And I think there's going to be a lot to recap when we get to that 100 days. But in the meantime, we're taking a look at things as they occur. And right now, we're taking a closer look at tariffs, because that's what's been going on the last week or so. I'm here in the studio once again with Dave Narkunas and Greg Faith, a couple friends who enjoy talking politics like I do, and they stay pretty well informed. And I hope they help you stay informed, too. Thanks for tuning in. Guys, thanks for coming in once again.
Afternoon.
Always glad to have you here. We come in every 2 weeks or so, and
it's a pleasure.
A lot of stuff is happening all the time. So the big news the last couple of weeks is tariffs. And not just the fact that Trump's doing tariffs, because he said he was going to. So he's doing what he said.
Promises kept.
And it's happening, but the world is reacting. There are international reactions, and then there's domestic reaction. We'll get to that in a moment. That's really the stock market, what's going on in the stock market.
Right.
But tariffs. So Trump had a good presentation. Mm-hmm. He held up the board. He said, these are the tariffs that these countries are charging us.
That's it.
This is what we're charging them.
Reciprocal.
And it was very obvious why Trump was talking about tariffs, because the tariffs they charge us, these other countries, much higher than the tariffs that we charge them. You know, I was reflecting on this, really, why do people do that? I think after World War II, the United States, for better or worse, became kind of the policeman in the world.
Correct.
Okay, so we're the world police. I'm not a fan of that idea, but we also became the world benefactor.
The consumer.
Well, the consumer and the benefactor. And there's this belief, I think, with some of these other countries that they can make money off of us, and we don't need to make money off of them. So I think that's what results in that imbalance.
And then us paying everyone else's fair share in Europe. You see how much more they didn't pay. Tons of them didn't pay.
For NATO, you mean?
For NATO.
Yes.
And then within, was it a week, a few days, a few hours, all of a sudden everyone starts paying up?
Yeah. Yeah, so they are reacting. It isn't like they think that they're right. They just know they're getting away with it.
They got caught.
They just think, we'll see what we get away with.
They just keep pushing the boss.
And there's no one from the United States, at least past administrations, has really been willing to hold these other countries accountable.
Democrat or Republican.
Democrat or Republican, and now Trump is doing it. And then some of the things that occurred, Trump announced all of these tariffs. And, what's he doing? What is his end game? You always kind of wonder, because you don't really know it until afterwards. I think one of his end games was to isolate China, and I think he succeeded very well at that. Because everyone else, all these countries around the world, said, well, okay, they start picking up the phone, we'll talk, we'll call.
Yeah.
China said, we're going to raise tariffs. We're going to play this game.
Didn't 130 countries decide to play ball?
130.
I think it was 130.
Yeah, went from 70 to 130 over the last few days.
But China,
bam, they're going to go right into a trade war.
Right, they're going to go into a trade war.
It's like taking this part and pulling it off and going, we'll show you, United States.
That's right. And so Trump said, well, that's fine.
Yeah, we don't need your stuff.
Raise your tariff. We don't need your stuff.
But apparently he was on the phone. He himself, I believe, was the person that was on the phone wheeling and dealing with these people and getting it down. He's like, okay, that's reasonable. 10% for you.
Come to the table.
I heard there were a lot of 10%.
Well, it's majority is 10% to start, and then as his negotiation with assigned people per country start to show them, okay, this is the inequity. We want to narrow it down to a small margin where you and us can find a fine line to get fairness. It's all about being fair. Now, his comment has been for decades and decades, we're being taken advantage of. Nobody's willing to.
That's right.
To do the dirty, but now they're bringing up these videos from Pelosi when she is her junior congressman standing there going, and here's the numbers. We need to have this fixed. And of course, well, you had your opportunity, you blew it. Now you're sitting here.
Well, I think that they enjoyed the graft.
Of course. They benefited.
That's what they did.
Big time.
They benefited personally from this, and I think that's what we're going to
continue to see. That's why they're on fire.
That's why they're on fire. So China took the bait.
Oh, yeah.
China ramped up, Trump ramped up, China ramped up, Trump ramped up. Meanwhile, everyone else is saying, let's deal. And then Trump started announcing decreasing tariffs.
Correct.
On everybody except China.
Put a pause for 90 days.
No, not only that, but he pulled tariffs on chips, phones, tablets.
Now he's picking products.
That'll affect China's trade too, because our iPhones and whatnot are made in China. But China reached out to Australia.
Oh, and Vietnam.
And Vietnam too?
That's right.
I didn't know about that.
That's right, Vietnam.
Just this week.
They just met. Yeah.
Did Vietnam agree to join forces?
No. They're on our side.
All right. Well, that's very interesting too, and it's surprising because China, of course, and Vietnam, you'd think
they're like that, but
right. But I think when it comes to dealing with Trump and coming into the modern world, they're saying, "Well, China, you're really still Stone Ages."
You have to think about the South China Sea when you start talking to these other nations, because China thinks the South China Sea is theirs. They're already having cahoots with Philippines, saying, "We'll back up."
Taiwan. Taiwan Strait is one of the most run through avenues in the world. Yeah.
They're the Spratly Island, all these different Vietnam. This is not
so Vietnam turned them down. I knew Australia turned them down, and I think that China is trying to establish their coalition. Remember during the Gulf Wars and whatnot, we established the coalition. Right? And we had big coalitions.
Axis of evil versus
big coalitions. China's trying to establish coalition, and guess what? They can't do it.
They can't do it.
That's because China doesn't have any friends. Because China, in my opinion, China is not a friend. China's not a friend to Vietnam.
No, they've never been.
China's not a friend to Australia. And these countries say, we're not doing anything. We have no common ground.
We have the U.S. to worry about. We become an ally to you. They stop our purse strings, we're going to go.
So they know where the benefit is, these other countries. So China is now, they're the ones with the highest tariffs.
They are.
From us.
Now it's catching them because they're.
Now it's catching them. The rest of the world is moving on.
The consumers are.
And the rest of the world's moving on, but China is stuck in their mindset. Backward, communist, leftist, Democrat
You'll
thinking.
do what I tell you to do and like it.
That's right, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's because it doesn't work with human nature. Really, I mean, they're following some avenue of human nature that they think is the way to go, but people aren't made that way. I think people want there to be some kind of fairness. They know that if we're going to benefit, whoever we are, those guys got to benefit too. There has to be a win-win, and Trump's going for win-win, and China's going for win-lose.
They want their own control and power over everything.
That's it.
Remember the goal. It's to take over everything.
Take over everything. I think the rest of the world knows that. And Trump, by what he did, I don't know if he thought ahead that far. I'd like to think he did.
He's thinking 2
but
years,
he
3 years
isolated. He just isolated. It's like, China, you're over here. You're going to go back to
the art of war.
Old way of thinking. But they're totally isolated. And I think that's very interesting. So now they thought they had the leverage over us, and it turns out that they don't. Because the rest of the world can start making stuff that we have otherwise. I mean, a lot of the stuff we buy from China is junk. A lot of places can do that.
Here's the key is these minerals that we need for defense. I was just watching something the other day where they're talking about all this magnets. Let's just call it magnets for whatever. The item A is magnets. I know for a fact that by the government standards, anything made by a defense contractor cannot be produced from any foreign country. But if somebody else has the mineral rights and we don't have it, that's where we kind of get stuck. But here's the thing. I could name you 1,000 landfills right now that are just a magnet gatherer's dream. And it's called a landfill. And here we have our country just burying our own stuff to unbury it later to these people who are out there going, we need to keep, no, we don't. We're throwing it away. We just got to get it back out.
Well, maybe will solve the problem. But China has isolated themselves.
That's correct.
And Trump facilitated that. I think Trump just threw the bait out there, and they gobbled it up because China thought that Trump was giving them the advantage. China thought they had the advantage. And now they're just embarrassed. And they have no friends. So they go to Australia? No. They go to Vietnam? No. Maybe they'll get some help from North Korea. Not that we do anything to North Korea anyway. But it's silly.
I think the interesting thing is he'll say frequently, I'm good friends with Xi. I get along really well with President Xi of China.
Yeah.
He says that, and he says, me and Putin got along well. So is it all the business people are the problem?
Well, I did read that that China has a problem. President Xi has a problem.
He does.
Political at home. Because he's got hardliners behind him who want there to be high tariffs. They don't care. They just want to hold out Trump. And that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I think Xi might, on some level, recognize that there's a better way to go. But he's going to have trouble doing it if some of the folks at home are going to try to depose him if he tries to go that way.
Well, that could be another Tiananmen Square all over again. And I'm not too concerned about it because the pandemic, he managed to keep that under control. But he was welding people into their apartment buildings to do it and feeding them and doing all the things he's doing. But for now, if you keep paying attention to what the media is doing, you would think that these people are all living out in the streets now because of a week of not having anything to do. But
people in China, you mean?
Oh, they're blowing this thing so far out of proportion it's not even funny.
Well, that's fine. I don't care what they do. I've been there. You know, it's not a good place.
No,
it's not a good government.
It's the most polluted place on the planet right now. I mean, my God,
it's not good.
The air is cleaner right now because they're not manufacturing.
I don't know if Xi really wants to do anything, or if he's just hamstrung by those behind him, or not. I don't really care. Fact of the matter is, China is isolated, and China's not good. So I think that if there's some price that they end up paying, and if that's once again to be isolated like they were for decades through the Mao days,
so be it.
So be it.
Well, let me ask you this
question. The rest of the world can move on.
Okay. Are you ready not to have Christmas this year?
What do you mean by that?
Well, where was all of our stuff made that gets under the tree?
Well, first off, we'll still have Christmas. I don't care about the stuff. Like I say, a lot of the stuff that we get from China is junk.
Of course it is. I'll agree.
It's junk. And
no doubts about that.
I work on these vintage motorcycles. And there are some parts I'm willing to buy from China, many that I'm not. But I've got customers sometimes who want to bring in their own parts. And
you're like, eh?
So you know what? We can get this stuff from Germany, or we can get this stuff from England, or we can get this from somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
Don't buy the Chinese stuff. They say, well, it's the same thing. No, it's not. It's not. No. It's a good fake, but it's not the same thing. No, and you're going to be sorry if you buy that junk.
They're design thieves. They're intellectual property thieves. They steal and steal and steal.
They steal and steal and steal. And that's why they don't have any friends, because they're not a friend. They're regarding all these countries out there as sources of information. They're just stealing from everybody, not just us.
They haven't done anything since gunpowder.
Yeah. Well, I think that communism is backwards. It just is. It's not a system that favors innovation. It's not a system that encourages entrepreneurship. It's a system that squashes all that.
Like so
they've got this huge population, a large land mass, but they're stifling innovation by their government. And it's going to take a very long time for them to understand and to make some reforms internally to start acting like.
China does the big. This could be the tipping point, you think?
I don't think it's going to be the tipping point.
No,
I think that it would require
break it up a little bit.
The masses in the street.
Well, that's what I'm trying to suggest.
If the masses were to come out, then maybe there'd be some effect. If those in power really thought they were going to lose, but I tell you what, the people in power, they're going to mow down their own people.
Mao starved millions.
Yes, exactly.
Intentionally.
Yeah,
so
and that kind of thing.
This is what I'm trying not to say without being censored, but the key is knock yourselves out. I'd welcome it, to be honest with you.
I would love to see China
needs to become
a modern world citizen.
If you took the benefit of Hong Kong, I've been to Hong Kong. I can say I've been to Hong Kong, but not mainland China per se. That was the way communist China, in my opinion, was headed. Taiwan, how we believe it should be going.
Yep, Taiwan's doing
Vietnam and North Korea. It's just that Pan-Asian area has had enough of China. The big redheaded stepbrother needs to go and be a museum, in my opinion.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. And maybe this will help that along. I'm hoping that they are stubborn enough to continue to isolate
hang themselves all up by that
all day long. We'll give them the rope.
And I believe
I think Trump gave them the rope.
We're seeing that when I made the analogy of a fishing pole. I'm like, not really, folks. I mean to say I'm the gallows puller, and these people are headed to the bottom.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people in China, and we don't want them to suffer. It's the government that is causing the suffering.
And again, Mao let millions starve.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't think this group, they're used to democracy or a form of middle class.
Yeah, they're used to a form of middle class.
And
they certainly were very poor during the Mao days, but they've gotten used to a form of middle class. Not freedom, but middle class.
They can't afford the phone they make, but at least they can watch the TV and have the kids can have some kind of education, and you're not being under thumb too much of the government. But
not as much as they were in the past.
This credit rating that they have to have, and all the different social
credit rating
that are starting to migrate over here, and of course we now, if you remember the last conversations we've had about Americans of Chinese ancestry are living in China, and those folks are coming over here and occupying jobs and positions in government and whatnot. We would hope that they would be able to transition back to China and saying, okay, now I've learned.
They're staying here. They're coming in, getting educated here.
And then you go back to there and say, okay, guys, we're going to start flying American flags everywhere.
Yeah.
In that sense that it could work to our advantage now, thinking about this as saying, well, yeah, we get you to go over there and.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with all that, but I think that the tariff news in the last few weeks has been really dramatic. And, of course, let's talk about stock market, the U.S. reaction. The stock market,
yo-yo.
Tank. I mean, it was really...
I've never seen it go down that low.
I got nothing in the market, so
it really plummeted. And then it surged the biggest day since back in 2008, at 3,000 points in a day.
Yes.
Then it went down again. So I think that there's genuine fear about what can happen, but I think it's got to be considered fear of irrational governments. And I think a lot of these governments overseas are rational enough that they're coming to the table and they want to talk. China's the big irrational one, and they don't want to. They think that they can control us with the pressure, but like we said before, they have no friends, no one to help them. It's just them, and they're totally isolated.
It's starting to devalue, and the dollar is starting to catch up again.
Well, if the Chinese currency, the yuan, would float the way that they're supposed to, that's part of what China does. So China
playing the game.
China plays a lot of games. They steal our stuff, steal our ideas, and they manipulate their currency in order to maintain this advantage. And
they can stay that.
I'm glad for Trump that he's not putting up with it anymore.
I'm just embarrassed that these people out there. They're eating their own words, and yet they're killing their own young, and they're gobbling up their own kind. It's not productive. It doesn't get anything done that the average person can say, yeah, I didn't make anything on the stock markets. I don't have a bear in the fight. But the problem is, don't count on that to be your investments, folks. There's other things you can do with your money to not have to worry about, especially senior citizens, and I think I'm looking at a good majority of senior citizens now,
I'm there.
jumping into the market or getting out of the market or moving their money around.
Well, my mom has some friends who, back during a previous market upset,
the 2008 fiasco,
sold everything.
Yeah, I did the same.
To get out.
I'm done. That's it.
But they've suffered. They wish they had. My mom did not. And she just stuck it out, and it paid off.
Train it is, roller coaster.
So those who really need to take the money out in order to live today, that's a difficult situation to be in, because you had the value, you thought you had this value, the market goes down, now you're taking it out when it's lower, and you're cashing in a lot more shares in order to get the same dollar amount, because inflation is still here.
Exactly.
By the way,
it ain't going away anytime soon.
Well, it'll go away eventually, but that's not gonna happen overnight.
I thought inflation was gonna be here forever.
Well, the worst thing I think is when the man before this guy got in office saying, "We're gonna have to bite the bullet, folks. It's gonna be painful." Yeah, when you declared war on petroleum and caused this inflation called Bidenomics. Now the other fellas sitting there going, it's going to hurt a little bit, but we got to stick it out. Well, I ain't going to win. Now both sides are saying it. So
well, I think that it's going to take time to undo the damage that was done.
Yes, that's exactly correct.
At least a couple years, if not 3
years.
It's
going to take time to undo the damage that was done. The 5 years were very damaging. The Democrat years were extremely damaging.
Extremely damaging. When you stop the production of oil, you stop the building of power plants, and that's the one that hurt the worst is you're building all these now data centers that are now required by these new laws or regulations being deregulated. If the station's being built, I need to put a production of energy next to it so it doesn't affect the grid. We know the grid's antiquated beyond any imaginable amount of thought by looking at some of these towers going, it's amazing this thing's still standing. But that's where we have to start saying to the opposite side, if you want to go that way out, is you can create hundreds of millions of jobs around the world just by infrastructure improving itself. Bridges falling down. It's this old story of the Buttigieg when the bridge collapsed or because something happened out. I don't know.
Yeah, we've been ignoring the infrastructure, but I think that you're right. Energy is the key
Energy is that what makes a world
and we
go
need the
round.
energy. Well, yeah, every economy needs energy.
You've got
You
to have
need
your own
energy
supply.
for production, for transportation, for heating your homes, and driving the tractors to.
Not keeping us in the 1800s.
That's right. Not keeping us in caves, practically.
Charge your phone.
Yep.
But
you need it for everything.
Everything.
I've got these power stations. I've got the solar. I've got the cables. I've got the batteries. I'm waiting. When it happens, I'm just going to say, okay, I'll go over here and put all this up and catch the sun, and you guys could have a nice day. Because I don't have that power requirement.
Yeah.
But if every home in America had these new federal building laws, be able to produce 10% of your own power from your home, that's certainly, or these individual, I hate to say this, but I'm a tech guy, and I'm telling you right now, 400 feet below your house could be a nuclear power plant. That doesn't cost that much to operate and maintain because there's no maintaining it at all because it's 400 feet down and nobody can get to it, so there's no terrorism act. As long as you keep pumping water into it, it's going to keep outputting steam and turning a turbine and making electricity.
Well, maybe someone's going to do it. In the meantime, we do have plenty of oil and gas, and we got to take advantage of that. We got to take advantage of that. That's it's inexpensive. It's hugely available.
It's
readily
not rocket
available.
science.
And it's not rocket science. We've got some very good technology for getting it out, for keeping it safe, and for utilizing the power that it contains, all that potential.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it.
They could turn plastic back into crude oil.
Well, maybe that's a solution.
That's part of it. Every little beat.
We got a few minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about immigration and the border and what's going on. So what's going on with the deportations?
Continuing on. For violent criminals.
Tom Homan is like a superhero, and he's leading the charge with getting rid of the most dangerous criminals first. He's dead serious. He's good friends with Trump, and he is really focusing on executing the message that he sent. We're going to get rid of all these dangerous people, and they're doing it. And thankfully, we have a president in El Salvador who is really on our side, who just met with the president.
Yeah, I saw
and
those.
He's got, remember, that used to be the most violent country in the Western Hemisphere, and it had the biggest jail, a mega jail. And he says to the President Trump, we have a mega jail, we can keep them in, send them. So he wants to get in really good terms with Trump, and I can't wait to see the reward that's going to happen between our
So
these
what's
two
happened
countries.
with El Salvador in terms of their own crime? You said it used to be the most.
It's down like 98% or something like that.
Yeah.
It's
So
dropped
there's
to
room in
almost
this mega
zero.
jail for more of these criminals from America.
Yeah, they just let them out.
They're warehousing it there. They're basically stripping of all their dignity, shaving them, putting them all in these PJs and white underwear, and nobody talks. Nobody's. They're totally.
But we got federal judges who don't want this to happen.
Of course not.
They don't have the authority to say that. They have no control over foreign sovereign nations.
Yeah.
Well,
You know what I
they
mean?
think they do.
Yes.
That's the problem. They think they do.
Over these, I'm not going to say illegal aliens. I'm not going to say migrants. There's a new word we need to have encompassing so no one's offended.
Which would be?
Person of illegal entries. Who are we sending back there? That could be our new phrase, because some people like the word migrant, such as Democrats, and we, Republicans, like illegal alien, which is pretty more right out of the textbook.
Yeah.
But to be all-encompassing, persons of illegal entry is who we are getting rid of and deporting out of our country. Yeah. And it's good for our country because it gives more resources for the actual people that live here to begin with, that deserve it.
Yeah, well,
you know
there's a huge number. Well, how many migrants or illegal aliens came in during the Biden years? Do we know?
21.
20. I thought the total amount is 21, but 12 million.
So 12, between 12 and 20 million, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna
and
go
how
with
many
that.
have we deported so far?
Not
A
even
million?
Yeah, about that, maybe.
I don't know if it's a million. Tens of thousands,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I know
We got a long ways to go.
They're military
We
aircraft
do.
of these guys out here left and right. But we're only going for the criminals, not just mom and pop and a little
Yeah,
girl.
the MS-13
It's the
and
MS-13,
all the other
the
really-
Denver bunch and the New York
the murderers,
group and the Chicago.
rapists that killed like Lake and Riley, all these really bad guys. And even Trump said, they proposed to him in one of his press conferences, would you consider deporting homegrown actual Americans that are dangerous and violent as these people? And he went,
Yeah,
he went, yeah.
absolutely.
Wow.
Violence is violence.
So
What's going on with the voluntary deportation or self-deportation?
That's the best one, is because Noam was saying.
Christy Noam's commercial said, if you self-deport and you come through legal means back into our country, we will allow that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't follow the rules, you're never coming back.
So if they don't self-deport, once we deport them, they're never coming
Right.
back.
That's correct. Forever.
I think she means it. And
She does.
Yeah.
Oh, that woman's
She
serious.
looks pretty serious. I was going to say, she looks
you
pretty
can't
serious.
be more serious than forever. And she
So
says
people
forever.
are doing the self-deportation.
They are doing it
In
voluntarily,
droves, especially
yes,
New
they are
York.
doing it.
Yeah,
Especially
New York
in
City.
For a fact. New York
So
City.
they're buying tickets
Miami.
on an airline.
Well,
and
they're getting funded by organizations. Let's just say that.
but the funding is to get them
to get them out of the country.
across the border.
'Cause they
back
realize
out,
that
but not
yeah,
back in.
I can get back. I can come back again.
Yeah.
They waited before. They wait again.
Well, all these things tie together. They're
Right.
all
Big. Yeah, it's all knitted
enmeshed. I want to see the stock market come back. Certainly,
It will.
I want to see the illegal situation fixed.
Oh,
I did
God.
notice that Trump sent military to that swath of land right on our
It's
side
now
of the
military
fence.
base.
Yeah, great.
It's now a military. As long as it's military base.
May only be 30 feet wide.
And I can't wait for him to go. Okay, California, Tijuana. There we go. There's San Diego. The Pendleton will take care of that.
Yep.
New Mexico. You got the Army, and then Texas. Have it. Do your thing, and then you got it taken care of.
Yeah.
And I love that
So
idea.
we got to solve that problem. We got to get inflation squared away and the energy stuff squared away, and we got to get these tariffs squared away. And I think that as we continue to work on those things, we're going to see the stock market
Oh, it'll
start coming back because I think that people are bullish on what Trump is
They
doing.
want it to be.
They want it to be. Most people want it to be
We
successful.
just spent 4 years in a pandemic.
Yeah.
We got to,
That's right. We're coming out of serious doldrums here.
That's right.
The Biden
Everybody.
doldrums, and we want to get this looking good,
we
looking the
got to
way it
keep
used
Congress.
to be.
We got to keep the Senate. We got to keep the.
Sununu
House.
may be running for the Senate for Shaheen's seat.
Well, he's going to be going against me because I'm still.
Well,
in the
that's right. Because you
process.
guys are running. That's right. You
I'm
guys are
running.
running for Senate.
I've got the faith for Senate at Gmail.
He's got his
I've got
he's got his
excellent.
email.
My plan is the laws that I want to start trying to suggest, and there's never going to be a homeless veteran when I'm in office.
Well,
Never, ever going to be another homeless veteran.
that's the way it
It's
should be.
not going to happen.
Shouldn't. That's
And
right.
these borders going to be so tight. Fentanyl is going to be something like, what was that?
Yeah, fentanyl. That's we gotta fix that one
And
too,
I'm going to
guys.
have a street named in every city in Mexico of a dead American. That's a promise.
We're out of time. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. We'll be back in a couple weeks. We'll see
Couple
what's
weeks.
going on 2 weeks from today.
It'll probably-
Who knows what the world's going to look like?
Well, let's hope we're all smiles and no frowns.
Yes, that's for sure. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. And folks, I want to thank you for tuning in. My name is David Schoneman. You're watching Perspectives here with Dave Narkunas and Greg Faith. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. And if you have any comments or questions you'd like to let us know about, please send us an email. It should be there on the screen. We'd be glad to entertain your questions and to try to answer them to the best of our ability. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.